Hi, everybody. Welcome to Dan on Sports. Well, here we go. The men's NCAA college basketball tournament begins in earnest after first four games. And I'll tell you, if you are a sports fan, if you are a fan of men's college basketball, then these next 2 days are two of the best days in all of sports. It's like the Super Bowl and the World Series wrapped into one. Or dare I say also the WBC championship game. But that's a subject for another day. Anyhow, and I've put my bracket already in the newsletter, and you can go back and read the newsletter to take a look at my picks. But anyway, here are my final four teams. I see Duke, Florida, Arizona, and Michigan going to the Final Four. I see Florida playing Michigan in the national championship game, and Michigan winning the national championship, knocking off the defending champs. Now, record-wise, I was pretty good with my picks last year. I had Florida winning it all, and it happened that the Gators did win it all. And I have Florida going to the national championship game again this season. And I don't know, I'm not seeing as many upsets this year as in previous seasons. And I think one of the reasons happens to be with the NIL and how these teams have loaded up on talent, awfully difficult to have a Cinderella team as in the past. That's how I see it anyway. That doesn't mean we're not going to get any upsets, and we probably will. I don't see as many upsets as you've seen in previous years. But that doesn't make the next 2 days just absolutely fun. All right, so that said, some other thoughts on the upcoming tournament. St. John's, which in my neck of the woods has received a lot of attention, came in as the number 5 seed. That got some people upset. They thought St. John's should have been the number 4 seed. I don't know if that makes that much of a difference, 4 versus 5. But that said, I do see Rick Pitino's team beating Northern Iowa and Kansas, but I see the Red Storm losing to Duke. Now, I know Duke has a lot of injuries, and the Blue Devils, although they've played very well, have those injury problems, but I still see Duke as a Final Four team. I don't see, for example, a UConn-St. John's matchup. That would be tremendous. In fact, I'll make the case I'm rooting for a UConn-St. John's matchup. I think that would be wild. I just don't see it happening. I don't see it in the cards. I think St. John's will lose to Duke. They'll make it as far as playing Duke, but then lose, but they'll get to the Sweet 16. Now, I see UConn beating Furman. I mean, they should. What's Furman, a 15 seed? UConn, a number 2 seed? I see UConn having a battle against UCLA, but UConn winning that game. And I see UConn beating Michigan State, but then losing in the Elite Eight to Duke. Villanova, now, maybe I'm wrong on this, but I see Villanova as having an early exit. And they've turned their season around this year. I don't think there's any doubt about it. Villanova, a better team this season, but they struggled a bit, particularly in the Big East Conference tournament. And that's why I see Villanova with an early exit. You know, you go back to the days when the Big East was the prime basketball conference. And now you take a look, and the Big East placed just 3 teams in the NCAA tournament this year in UConn, St. John's, and Villanova. And I see Villanova with an early exit. I also see Houston being tough. If Houston makes it to the Final Four, I would not be surprised. Houston will be a tough team. But that said, again, my Final Four picks are Duke, Florida, Arizona, and Michigan. Florida and Michigan battle for the national championship, but this time Michigan will defeat the Gators, and so the Florida team will not have the chance to repeat as champions, keeping UConn as the last repeat champion. That's how I see it anyway. This is going to be a lot of fun. This is always a great time if you are a college basketball fan, particularly these 2 days, today and Friday. I mean, how can you beat it? 16 games today, 16 games tomorrow. Doesn't get any better than that. So we shall see. And like I said, I'm off to a good start as of this recording. We had the first 4 games on Tuesday and Wednesday, and I'm putting this together on Wednesday afternoon. My picks for the Tuesday games were correct. I did have North Carolina State losing to Texas, and Howard beating UMBC, so I'm off to a 2-0 start. Who knows what's going to happen? That's what makes it so much fun. That's going to do it for Dan on Sports. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. By the way, thank you for subscribing to my newsletter, and if you haven't, very easy to subscribe. All you have to do is go to danonsports.com. Enjoy the games. These next 2 days are going to be a lot of fun. See you later.